The year is 1984. We are movie executives, not really, but for the sake of this, who have just seen a rough cut of the film that will be eventually known as Star Trek 3, The Search for Spock. And we are going to fix it. Cue the intro. All right, Nate, take it away.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Mirror Movie Podcast. I am Nate, and across the aisle and across the country from me is my co-host and older brother, Dan.
The
Say
yin
hello,
to your
Dan.
yang, as it were.
What's this now?
The yin to your yang.
Yes, quite the adversary, the Spock without a beard to my Spock with a beard. Hence the title of our podcast, Mirror Movie Universe. And speaking of Spock, bearded or not bearded, let's talk about The Search for Spock, the third Star Trek film in the franchise. And if we're going to talk about it and fix it, you're going to have to know what happens in it. So, The Search for Spock opens with Kirk kind of mourning the death for his friend Spock. Spock died at the end of Wrath of Khan by saving the rest of the ship and by taking a lethal dose of radiation in doing so. The Enterprise is being called back to Earth to be overhauled, and Bones, who is a friend of Kirk and Spock, the ship's doctor, has started to act a little wacky. People hear Spock's voice kind of coming out of him. He is talking all of this stuff about climbing a mountain on Vulcan, which is Spock's home world, and Spock is dead. What could this mean? Well, Bones, as it turns out, we learn from Spock's father, Saavik, has actually melded with Spock's soul, and Spock's body might be dead, but his soul is alive, and there might be a way to revive Spock in some way. But his body's gone. Or is it? Because David, Kirk's son from the last film, and Sarek, not Sarek, Saavik, all of these Vulcans have the same name, Saavik from the last film, are exploring a planet, the Genesis planet, which received a blast from the Genesis device in the last film and is now burgeoning with life where there once was a dead rock. And it's also where they buried Spock's body at sea. They are coming along and they discover a life form inside of Spock's coffin. And they soon discover that basically he is rapidly aging along with the planet from an infant all the way up to the present time. There's some instability with that, along with Spock's maturing and the planet going kind of nuts in its seismic activity and going crazy and all that kind of stuff. So it appears that the Genesis experiment has failed, succeeded in bringing Spock's body back to life, but failed in keeping the planet alive. Meanwhile, this evil Klingon general, played by Christopher Lloyd, in I think, a pretty strange casting decision, is trying to get his hands on Genesis to bring it back to the Klingon Empire to use as a weapon. Kirk and his crew, in an attempt to get Spock's body off of the Genesis planet, steal the Enterprise out from Starfleet, ride it out to the planet, and in a final showdown with the Klingon general, defeat the bad guys and rescue Spock. Not without David, Kirk's son, dying in the process, and the Enterprise being blown up in order to escape the Klingons. Spock is then taken back to Vulcan, where his mind is reunited with his body, albeit with a few holes in his memory like Swiss cheese. And we get a to be continued at the end of the credits. Dan, what did you think of Search for Spock?
So I love this film, genuinely. There is an often promulgated theory that among Star Trek fans that odd-numbered films are bad and even-numbered films are good. And if I had to disprove that theory in some way, either by finding an even-numbered one that was bad or an odd-numbered one that was good, this is my star witness. This is all the evidence I need to disprove it. The Search for Spock is great. Like, genuinely great. And I don't understand. It's not like it's the ninth film and they're like, oh, the even number, odd number thing. Like, no, it's the third one. And people are just like, man, it's not very good. I don't know if they're comparing it to the Wrath of Khan. I don't know where this is coming from. Like, generally, I don't know why people think it's bad. Let's talk about everything that I love, because I love so much.
Yeah.
First of all, the guest stars are all great. You've got Mark Leonard coming back as Sarek from the original series. Robin Curtis takes over for Kirstie Alley as Saavik. I think she does a great job. You've got Mer Bertrick, who's back as David. He's doing great as Kirk's son. I like Christopher Lloyd as the Klingon commander. I think we might disagree on that, but that's okay.
All right. I think he's a great villain. I just don't think he's a great Klingon. There's things that make great Klingons, and there's a kind of aggressiveness to the conniving that I think that you need a dash of. And I think that Christopher Lloyd, if he played, I don't know, if he played a Romulan or an Andorian or something, I think it would have been better. But as a Klingon, nah, not for me. But anyway, what else do you like about?
So the funny thing is, like, I love the Klingons are in this as the villains. They are, for the first time, like we saw them in the motion picture, really did just establish how powerful V'ger was. This is the first time they're seen in film, and they are scary and menacing in a way that we haven't seen before. In the original series, like, what was it, a couple fist fights? Like, that was all that we got with them. Right here, like, they're killing people and they're destroying the Enterprise, and they're trying to figure out this Genesis thing, and they think it's a weapon. And I love that angle on it too. Like, from the dawn of human history, anytime we've had a scientific breakthrough, somebody has been like, let's weaponize it. Right. And so I love that the Klingons don't see the science. They just see it as this planet killer, because that's kind of what it is. Right. I love that. I love DeForest Kelley too. We're talking about performances. He's great as this haunted kind of tortured soul in this whole thing. Does awesome. And the friendship with Spock that he has is really cool that they call that out, because it's almost like I don't think that Bones and Spock would have hung out without Kirk. Like, he's the linchpin that holds that friendship together. Like, we all have that friend of a friend. You know?
Yeah, I get what you're saying. And so it would have been so easy to have Kirk be the one who gets, the fact that they've got Bones being the guy makes a lot of sense. And it wouldn't have made sense with anyone else on the crew, but that does work.
It was really cool that they did that, because he's kind of a jerk to Spock most of the time, but it's like there is some genuine love and friendship there. I love the destruction of the Enterprise here. And I was trying to think about why, because we've seen the Enterprise blown up in other movies, but I love it so much here because it's a moment of victory. It's a moment of triumph. It's not like a defeat. They trick the Klingons. You have that moment where they're like, oh, the computer's talking. And you just like fill up with glee. And then Christopher Lloyd's like, and it explodes. It's so fun. It's so amazing to see.
Yeah. Your mic cut. You yelled that so loudly, your mic cut out when he yells, get out of there. You peaked the microphone. That is a great moment for him. And the destruction of the Enterprise is great. It's on my list for later. But yeah.
And the last thing that I'll say that I love about this movie, and it really applies not just to this one, but to The Wrath of Khan and to the next one to come, The Voyage Home, is there are consequences here. And that's something that you don't see a lot in movies at all, ever. But Spock is gone for 95% of this film. Right? Leonard Nimoy does not play Spock for 95% of this film. If they've somebody remade The Wrath of Khan years later, they'd probably, just bring Spock back before the credits rolled in that film, let alone keep him dead for most of the next one.
You've seen Into Darkness, right?
Yeah, I've seen.
Wait, no, it's
Trek into Darkness. Yeah,
it's yeah. Whoopsie.
But not just that, the consequences of destroying the Enterprise. They don't just make a new one. It's gone for the next film, right? They steal the Enterprise. They're facing a court-martial in the start of the next film. You have the consequences that Kirk did throughout the entire original series. He's got this son who's estranged from him. I think that it's absolutely fantastic to see that. It's not something that you see in movies very much. And I think it's a really cool choice. So I love that for not just this one, but either one on either side of it too. But what do you like about this movie?
Much of what you like, although I still disagree about Christopher Lloyd. I think he's a great villain, but he's a bad Klingon. The Klingons in the original series are very conniving. And so, yeah, they have some fist fights, but they're also the antagonists in silly episodes like Trouble with Tribbles, where they're trying to like do spying stuff and all of that. And they're kind of these under the table backstabby kind of guys in opposition to everything the Federation is. And I just wish that he chewed the scenery a little bit more in that way, in which he was a little backstabby. But he does kind of establish what Klingons are after that, where it's like this warrior culture, which obviously flowers into all of my favorite Klingons, from Worf to Chancellor Gowron and all of this in DS9. And that's great. So Wrath of Khan was a tough act to follow. And I think that's why people have this even odd thing. Search for Spock is also one of my favorites. I like 2, 3, and 4 a lot. And Search for Spock is right in the middle of there. So I really think it got this reputation because Wrath of Khan was just a tough act to follow. I like that there is a cost to rescuing Spock, mainly in blowing up the Enterprise. I laugh a little bit because this movie highlights the difference between Kirk and Spock beautifully. No, sorry, not Kirk and Spock, Kirk and Picard beautifully. Because Kirk's code for blowing up the Enterprise is code 1A. It's like 4 characters. In the Next Generation, is it Picard or
First
is it
Contact?
Data? Yeah. There's also an episode of the Next Generation where it's either Picard or Data impersonating Picard, and the code that he uses is 17346732147 Charlie 327897777 Tango 732 Victor 73117888732476789764376. That's the actual one. You can look it up. And
or did you read it off?
No, I can close my eyes and do that too. No, it got remixed into a song, and I rather like the song, and so I've just memorized the song. And anyway, I think that despite the rather silliness of the destruct code, I rather like that the Enterprise is blown up and that there's consequences, like you said. I love the ending of this film. It's really touching when he's like, Jim, your name is Jim, and it's a
beautiful moment. It really
it's so great. When I rewatch these movies, I also, for the older ones, rewatch the episode of Siskel and Ebert where they review it.
Interesting.
Just so I can, I've watched Siskel and Ebert reviews for years and years, and they both didn't like the ending because they felt like it ended in the middle. They're like, we want to see more adventures of these people. And I'm like, well, you will, in the other movies, but I like that it ends where it is. Also, just the main thing that I like about this movie, and the last thing that I'll say I like about this movie, is that it gets the comedy right. It gets the humor right. The main thing, and this is also something that Siskel and Ebert said, the main thing that is great about the Star Trek movies is that it's people who like each other, like going on an adventure, and because they like each other and have this chemistry, they are entertaining to watch. And given that, I'm a big fan of this. This is the best one where they steal the Enterprise together. Everyone has a little moment. Sulu says, "Don't call me tiny." That was lovely. And you go through this whole story where they're all together minus Uhura. Whoops.
Well, there's a cool moment too when she's like beams him off and she's like, "Get in the closet to the."
Yeah, that was great.
That was great.
Yeah, no, it does the humor right, which another odd numbered film really does not do right. But Search for Spock gets the funny parts right, and it feels correct for the characters to actually say and do the things that they say and do. So that's what I love. I love all of the things you said. Also, just the comedy feels good in this movie. So yeah, there you go. That's what I like. But you can't like everything. Yeah. Dan, you got to fix something about Search for Spock as much as you've praised it. What do you fix?
This is my fix for it, and it's the easiest fix ever to do. It also is going to feel like a cop out, but hear me out.
Yeah.
So the Search for Spock, I think, was titled by someone in the marketing department at Paramount. I really think that somebody in marketing was like, "You can't have Star Trek without Spock. Let's call it Spock's Back. Give us your money." And it became the Search for Spock, right? I think that just with that title alone, there's something implied there that they are going to find Spock.
Mm.
There's two really great twists or big moments in this. One is the destruction of the Enterprise, and the other is when Spock comes back.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that by titling it "The Search for Spock," you take away from that moment. The audience is expecting it from the moment that they see it. I mean, just imagine you go to the theater and you come home and somebody's like, "Oh, what did you go see?" And you're like, "I saw The Search for Spock." What's the next question? Did they find him? Right.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's that, it takes away from that. So, and interestingly, in the opening credits,
Mm-hmm.
Leonard Nimoy is only credited as director. He doesn't show up starring, featuring, special guest appearance by, nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing other than director. So like the movie is trying to keep it a secret a little bit,
Yeah.
but the title blows it. So my fix is retitle it, make it Star Trek 3 Genesis, Star Trek 3 Return to Genesis,
Star Trek 3 The
Genesis
Price of
Rebirth.
Redemption. Like, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. It's not a cop out unless you suggest an alternate. I'm not sure I like any of your alternates,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm not sure I like my alternate. I have to think about this more. The problem is the Search for Spock kind of rolls off the tongue,
Mm-hmm.
and in that I agree with the Mr. and Mrs. Marketing over in the department or whatever.
Uh-huh.
But I don't know what I'd call it. It's so central to the plot, and it gets like yeah, it leaves it out of the credits and all of that. But like you open with Kirk watching the footage of him going "Remember" with McCoy, which we talked about in a Wrath of Khan episode, that they laid that groundwork. I don't know. I'm sure that Trekkies in between the second and third film were like, "Oh man, he did the Remember thing with McCoy."
Yeah.
What's that about? But it does just telegraph what it's gonna do in a way that none of the other ones really do.
Yeah.
Wrath of Khan tells you who the antagonist is, but Voyage Home has nothing really about it in the title. Undiscovered Country is nothing really about that in the title, and The Final Frontier is probably the best title for the worst movie. But yeah, I don't know what I'd call this one. I don't know.
I think, I mean, I would do something with Genesis. I think that immediately calls back to anybody who remembers Wrath of Khan. I think that there is a cop out where you don't bring back Leonard Nimoy. You either bring back a younger Spock and they take the Katra from McCoy, they put it in him, and you've got somebody younger playing him. You could have easily done that. Nimoy didn't want to come back originally, and then he kind of changed his mind and decided to. I even think that you could have had his like consciousness transferred into Saavik. In my mind, they're kind of setting up, it seems like, a younger crew to take over. They've got Saavik as the new Spock. They've got Merrick Bertrick playing Kirk's son. Okay, maybe he'll be the new Kirk, and then they
well.
So yeah. I think that it's not a given necessarily that Spock comes back or that Nimoy comes back playing him, and so that's why I think, and I agree. I don't have a great title, like. But something with Genesis, something to call back so that you remember that from Wrath of Khan. You go, okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
The Genesis planet, or
yeah.
I don't know. The titles of episodes in the original series were ridiculous. It's like, oh, what are little girls made of? And it's
Let That Be Your Last Battlefield.
Yes.
There's only a couple that really fit. The one on the gangster planet is called A Piece of the Action, which is what the little kid says in the like when they I think they get him to distract a guard or something. He's like, "I want a piece of the action." But a lot of them are kind of out there.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's my fix. What's yours? How are you gonna fix
it? Okay, so we've established that I don't like Christopher Lloyd.
Indeed, we have, yeah.
For another matter, I don't like the guy who plays Kirk's son. I don't think he does a good job in this movie. I think he's much better in Wrath of Khan, but he kind of dies unceremoniously. And when he died, I'm like, okay, well, I want something else. I want something more symbolic to happen with this character. And therefore, given that I want something more to happen with that character, and I don't particularly like the Klingon, I want to switch up the final showdown. Yeah, the final fight between Kirk and the Klingon is a fist fight while the planet's going into lava and all of this kind of stuff. And Kirk says, "I have had enough of you," and kicks him
It's a
off of
very
the cliff.
human moment. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't like it resolving in a fist fight, and this is very telling because my favorite Star Trek film is The Wrath of Khan, where nothing gets resolved in a fist fight. I
Right.
would have much preferred like some trickery where they beam up to the Klingon cruiser. And if you're gonna have a fist fight, have it like on the Klingon cruiser. I didn't think that the final fight on the planet worked. But
Mm-hmm.
more than that, I think that um if the Klingon guy doesn't die on the planet by getting kicked into the lava, when the planet blows up, David is the only one there.
Ah,
Um in my alternate film here, because I think like another Klingon gets like hit or something, but he gets beamed back or something. But you could edit it out, just reshoot that last little fight scene. I think that it's rather symbolic that this planet that David has created is now where he's interred after getting Spock back from being interred, and it's more of a trade 1-for-1 with Spock. It's a little symbolic. You can call back to it. And my pitch, because we're going to pitch future Star Trek films,
uh-huh.
kind of relies on David being the only person on the planet when it goes imploding.
Okay. So you're
So
saying he still dies
he still
on the
dies. Mm-hmm. And
and
then
then
the Klingon final battle, the fist fight, whatever, put that in like the engine room. Make it
okay.
like a Hunt for Red October kind of thing where,
Very
you
cat and
know,
mouse, yeah.
yeah, kind of that. Because Christopher Lloyd, the other thing is he's not very physically imposing. He's not a big, strong, scary Klingon. And if he does a little cat and mouse thing with Kirk, I think I would like that better.
Yeah, I could see that for sure.
Yeah. But you might get a little bit of fatigue because Wrath of Khan's final battle also took place in space, be it to ship to ship. But I'd switch up that final fight. It gives
Yeah.
David a little bit of poeticism in his death, and it takes my not favorite villain and puts him in a little bit better position on the chessboard, I think. But yeah, that's just what I think.
I think so. I love the sacrifice that David makes there when they're counting
Mm-hmm.
down who's gonna die, and it's
Mm-hmm.
just kind of an eeny, meeny, miny moment, and
Mm-hmm.
it's so tense. And then he like jumps on the Klingon and kind of sacrifices himself.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really, I think, great moment for that character. I totally get where you're coming from with the final fight, though. Like it's a very hammy moment with the lava and the stuff. And yeah, if you put it somewhere else, if you made it more cat and mouse
Mm-hmm.
and a little more conniving, like you're talking about with what the
Yeah.
Klingons should be, I could definitely see that working much better.
Yeah. I totally agree. Of course I do. It was my idea. But anyway, yeah, that's what I would fix. What
Yeah.
would you fix about Search for Spock? Audience, tell us
Yeah.
in the comments in the doobly doo down below.
Yeah. Do the
Um,
typing in the thing. Let us know
yeah.
if you can come up with a better title for it. Because, like, I don't have a great one. But what do you got? Let us know.
Wow, I swallowed my Earl Grey tea the wrong way. Wow, you can tell I'm a Star Trek fan. All right, I think that wraps up this episode. Dan usually tells you to like and subscribe and all that
Like,
bull crap.
subscribe, all that stuff.
All
Thank
right.
you for watching. We very much appreciate it. And let us know what you think.